We continue our study in the gospel. We are going to be looking at Matthew chapter 18, verses 5 to 9. I'm going to be reading from the New Testament, a new translation by James Moffat. As you can tell, this translation, this copy has kind of seen better days, but it's still holding on. Matthew chapter 18 and verses 5 through 9. Whoever receives a little child like this for my sake receives me. But whenever but whoever is a hindrance to one of these little ones who believe in me, better for him to have a great millstone hung around his neck and be sunk in the deep sea. Woe to the world for hindrances. Hindrances have to come. But woe to the man by whom the hindrances does come. If your hand or your foot is a hindrance to you, cut it off and throw it away. Better to be maimed or crippled and get into life than have both feet or hands and be thrown into the everlasting fire. If your eye is a hindrance to you, tear it out and throw it away. Better get into life with one eye than keep your two eyes and be thrown into the fire of Gehenna. Now, we have in this section of Matthew's Gospel used the text to speak of the dangers of religious affiliation in the life of faith, speaking of the fact that religious affiliations can become destructive of the faith. You will not understand the debate between Jesus and the Pharisees and later Jesus with the Sadducees if you reduce it to just the level of a theological scrum. In other words, if you just see this as a case in which you have a theological disagreement, some person emphasizes this text, one person emphasizes that text, you see this, you see that, you say tomato, I say tomato. No, it's not that type of discussion. The reality is that not all that claim to be of Christ and Christian as necessarily of Christ and Christian. You see, the reality is what we believe and why we believe are all important. The reality, though, is that churches can become corrosive or ultimately destructive of real and true faith. Now, look at verse 6. Now, we need to be clear here. We are not talking of this brand of church versus that brand of church. I have a theological and denominational heritage I work out of. I'm not ashamed of that. But I recognize that there are other denominations and other theological traditions that bring something to the world. We're not talking about that sort of thing. The reality is that an otherwise good and wholesome denomination can come and generate a toxic and dysfunctional church. Churches can drive people from the faith. Churches can exist for the good of those in charge and control. Now, when churches become dysfunctional, they do not turn to other faith traditions. You know, you think of some atomic elements. As they begin to disintegrate, they become something else and something else and something else. It's not like you start out, as, I don't know, uh, a very extreme conservative Baptist and you disintegrate in faith and become a Presbyterian. If you disintegrate in that, you become an Episcopal. And if you disintegrate in that, you become a Roman Catholic. No, we're not talking about that. We're saying, in all of these traditions, there are good people who are true, authentic disciples of Jesus Christ. No, we're not talking about that. Now, when churches become dysfunctional, they do not turn to other traditions. They take what is Christian and twist it to their own ends. The Bible and faith has always had the potential to be abused. Just look at the Sadducees and Pharisees. And the remarkable thing is they were on opposite ends of the spectrum. One ideologically speaking, one in terms of value. but they both fell into the same trap of twisting the faith to their own end. One of the problems that one finds when working with people wounded by the church is that they have confused the church with the church. The institutional church is not the church of Jesus Christ. The church of Jesus Christ is found within the walls of the institutional church, but do not equate the institutional church with the church of Jesus Christ. The church of Jesus Christ needs to be organized, and needs to have structure, and needs to have discipline, and it needs to have a set of beliefs and values. But the institutional church is not the church of Jesus Christ. The church may be found in it, but it's not the church. It is here we see the danger inherent in making our ideology the ideology, or our set of values the only set of values. If I can control this, then I can determine who is Christian. If I'm in charge of who is a Christian, then I can destroy those who do not meet my standards. I can do this because they are not a Christian. The Pharisees were using this approach with Jesus. The Sadducees would take this to a whole new level when they led the push to crucify Jesus. If you're going to walk the walk of faith and walk the life of faith, you will have to endure these type of shenanigans in the church. You will not walk the faith if you're not unable to take a few bruises in the process. Now notice in verse 7, there is a shift in topic. Jesus moves to deal with those afflicted by sin, which is, of course, all of us. What the faith is the reality that I'm a person who is addicted to sin. We can make the center of faith just about anything, and that is the point here. The message of the gospel is a call to men and women to grasp how broken they are and how desperate their situation is. The heart of the faith has always been a place for those who are sinners, and a place for them to find the hope. And not just hope, but a future through that hope. The future in a world where sin is vanquished. If that is to be so, what does it say of my goal for life now? So, do the values and the ideology of our faith work to this view and work to this end? And if they don't, let us make the necessary corrections.